This is absolutely insane. The staring contest between Daryl Morey and restricted free agent Quentin Grimes continues on as the season begins to inch closer. However, there seems to have been a mindset shift within the camp of Grimes, who are continuing to prioritize more of a short-term contract with the qualifying offer seemingly now in play. I want to reflect on why this would be an absolute disaster for not just Quentin Grimes as an individual or the Sixers as a team, but for both sides. This is a situation in which a long-term agreement feels like it would be best for both, and I want to dive into exactly why that is the case. Now, to get into the latest bit of intel that we do have comes from Jake Fisher on the Bleacher Report app here, who says, quote, "I can absolutely say that the Sixers organization keeps saying that Quentin Grimes is their top priority. It's just a matter of dollars and cents. There is some buzz about him wanting to take the qualifying offer too, but I think at the end of the day, as things get closer, as we get into September and maybe even closer to October, that there will be enough synergy between Grimes and the Sixers because he's never made significant money throughout his tenure as an NBA player. He absolutely stands to benefit from taking a significant offer, whatever it ends up being in Philadelphia. They're willing to go past the second apron at certain points in the season, but they want to maintain flexibility right now. So there's a lot to kind of hit on with that. And the most notable points that I did want to highlight is, for starters, that September and maybe even closer to October time frame is not in the short term for this situation figuring itself out. The other key point that I do think is a factor we need to keep in mind for the foreseeable future as this season begins to take place and get to where we're actually looking at basketball on the floor is this final piece here, saying they're willing to go past the second apron at certain points in the season, but they want to maintain flexibility right now. Now, to keep this about Quentin Grimes directly here, a lot of this has been directly due to the restricted free agent market. And I've broken this down fairly in depth on the channel before, but obviously what a restricted free agent is that team in possession of the player has a chance to match any offer that is thrown their way. What the qualifying offer is, and in this case for Quentin Grimes, I believe the number sits at $8.6 million, is you take that for one season, and then you can be an unrestricted free agent next year. And the reason that is appealing is then he's in a case where he full out controls his own destiny. That is not currently the case. The Sixers are in the driver's seat for any offer that comes Quentin Grimes' direction. They have a chance to just directly match that with him having no say about this. The other reason why the market has dried up is every team is familiar with that exact same premise. And why would I want to sign up to pay a guy $20 million per year when the reality is I'm just sending in the paperwork and the Sixers are going to match it anyway? And this is not just unique to the Sixers and Quentin Grimes situation. That another example is with Cam Thomas here, as we got reports that he seems more likely to take that qualifying offer and become a restricted free agent next offseason. His number being $6 million. Now, for for Cam Thomas directly, that to me is a situation that makes a lot more sense for him to bet on himself. For Quentin Grimes, do not feel that is the case. And just for reference, we did get another report from the Bulls and Josh Giddey, who sits in a similar contractual camp, with Jonathan Kuminga being sort of the other guy in the same sort of frame of reference here. But we got a report that the Bulls offered Josh Giddey a 4-year, $80 million deal. I don't think Quentin Grimes is getting quite that, but what I do think is once one of these guys signs on the dotted line, it will have some ripple effects for the rest of what the marketplace looks like for these restricted free agents. That those four guys in particular, being Cam Thomas, Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga, and Quentin Grimes, are really the four best players out there. And it is not a coincidence that they are all lumped up in that restricted free agent market. Now, why I say this doesn't make sense for either side is for Quentin Grimes directly. You're on your fourth NBA team already, that he's bounced around. He's been on the Detroit Pistons. He's been on the Dallas Mavericks. He started his career on the New York Knicks, and he's yet to find that solidified footing in the league. I think for a guy to bet on himself and believe that you can make more than this, whatever the numbers are being talked about behind the scenes, is sort of short-sighted there. I get it. Believe in yourself, bet on yourself, and he obviously had quite the season here in Philadelphia during that second half of the year, but that was a lot of empty calorie statistics, and I think why there's a disconnect here is both the Sixers and Quentin Grimes himself trying to figure out how much of that was real, how much of that was me taking a leap as a player, and how much of that was purely based on the situation where I was not competing with other players for shots. There was the very funny moment where Georges Niang getting into it with Quentin Grimes, and what Niang was saying to Grimes directly here, if Joel Embiid's here, you're sitting in the corner. If Tyrese Maxey's here, you're sitting in the corner. And there is sort of some truth to that there. Now, there is this write-up from my guy Ben Pfeiffer here, who I think put it in a pretty nice way. And he writes, Quentin Grimes, as far as the restricted free agency outlook, and he types, most seasons, Quentin Grimes' trade from the Dallas Mavericks to the Philadelphia 76ers would be the steal of the deadline. The 24-25 NBA season was no ordinary year, but Grimes still aflame after joining the Sixers in February. Across 28 appearances, he poured in 21.9 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game on 59.2% true shooting for a decimated Sixers team while moonlighting as a viable perimeter initiator. Philly's offense wasn't particularly efficient with Grimes on the court, sitting a bit below league average in offensive rating. We shouldn't expect a long-time complimentary player like him to carry low-level units, but Grimes flashed some lead guard creation, attempted over a quarter of his half-court shots at the rim, and converted 57.4% of them. We've seen Grimes excel before in different situations, notably thriving as a complimentary two-way wing with the New York Knicks during his sophomore season. Paying the 25-year-old should be a no-brainer, but the Sixers cap situation complicates things. Massive contracts to Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George clog their cap room over the next 3 years. Beyond Maxey, McCain briefly played like an ascending star, and they spent the 3rd overall pick on VJ Edgecombe, another guard. The depth in that room could make Grimes more expendable, especially because of the corner Philly painted itself into. Finding a way to retain Grimes, even on a qualifying offer, would be wise. If the two sides can reach a long-term agreement, something in the ballpark of $18 to $22 million per year seems reasonable too. And this is why I don't think it makes sense for Grimes camp, is not only has he not found his real footing at the NBA to this point, but he's coming back to a team that is loaded at the guard position. That there is a real chance where straight up from day one next year, VJ Edgecombe is just better than Quentin Grimes. And we hope that to be the case. Now, granted, this is not me kicking Quentin Grimes out of town here, that I think there's certainly a place for him in the NBA and on this Sixers roster, but I do think there is no doubt that his level of opportunity will be decreased from what we saw last year. This is his chance to strike while the iron's hot, and he should be seeking the biggest payday of his career. That is what the Sixers should be signing up to give him. That if we were talking about an $18 million annual deal, that is totally fine. Maybe a 3-year contract. I think that's something that makes sense for both sides of things here. Grimes is a good basketball player. He can bring something to this Sixers team, but I don't think anybody can be fully convinced that the version of him that we saw in the second half of the season is truly the guy that he is. And when you do look at the entirety of last year, obviously starting the year with the Dallas Mavericks, coming over to the trade deadline, that across his 26.8 minutes per game, averaged 14.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.0 assists, shot 46.7% from the field, 38.5% from three, also shot 49.0% on corner three opportunities there. There is absolutely a player in here who can contribute to winning at a high level in a lower usage role. That is probably not going to be the ideal outlook for Quentin Grimes. I think if you looked at him, it gave him the true serum and asked him, what is your ideal role? He probably loved what went down last year, that he got to put up as many shots as he wanted. It was a rare opportunity. Obviously, everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Philadelphia 76ers last year, and Grimes is probably the biggest beneficiary of any of these players here. But now he's in an interesting spot as a player, and I think the Sixers are just going to continue to do this staring contest. They are bidding against no one. There is no reason for the Sixers to continue upping their offer because there is not a team that can swoop in and outbid them, that they can sit back, allow him to bring whatever his price tag is. Like, let's not forget that it started out him apparently wanting $25 million annually at the start of the season. That would be kind of crazy to me to pay Quentin Grimes that. But the other part that I'll keep in mind here is while saying that there's all these other guard talents on roster with Tyrese Maxey, with Jared McCain, with Quentin Grimes, certainly leading the pack there, it is also important to have tradable contracts. That from the Sixers angle, there is appeal to bring him back on one of these type of contracts, and then if mysteriously this guard combo is not working, that this combination of players is not built for overall team success there, that you can then flip that $18 million or $22 million deal for a forward that does fit better within the roster. This should be a win-win for both sides to come to a long-term agreement. A win for Quentin Grimes because you'll be making the most money that you have in the NBA to this point. A win for the Sixers because you have a young cost control player under a multi-year deal and the chance to flip that for a better player if the opportunity presents itself, or a better fitting player might be the better way to look at this. I understand why both sides are being patient in this, that Quentin Grimes is going to want to continue to maximize whatever that dollar figure is. The Sixers will continue to stare right back at him in this staring contest here, because there is not a knight in shining armor that's going to fly out from somewhere and offer him $40 million. There is not really a team with the cap space that can do that. The Utah Jazz are really the only option on the table. And why would the Jazz be that interested in Quentin Grimes, if we're being honest with ourselves? That the goal of the Utah Jazz for next year is to be a bad basketball team, that they want a chance at the number 1 pick overall again. They still have not gotten that true franchise centerpiece. I get you can make the case for the Walter Clayton Jr.'s, the Ace Baileys. I know Larry Markkanen's still kicking around there. Keontae George, who I like a little bit. They have some talent. Isaiah Collier, I'll throw in the mix here. But they're still looking for that clear franchise centerpiece, and they're going to be in the business of being one of the worst teams in the NBA next season. I don't think that is a team that the Sixers should be nervous about swooping in. For the Sixers directly here, it unfortunately is going to be continue to sit back and call the bluff, that there's not going to be a team that can outbid them. They got to hope some common sense kicks in, and ultimately, I do expect Quentin Grimes to be back in a Sixers uniform one way or another next year. I don't think there is a pathway to Quentin Grimes taking that qualifying offer and making more next offseason than should and will currently be on the table right now. Even if the Sixers are lowballing him to a crazy extent, I still think the market value for next offseason is going to be less than what is currently the case for him, just based on the situation and what his numbers will look like. We will see how things revive itself for now, or what the ultimate resolution of this situation is, but nonetheless, it does not sound like we're coming in for a landing anytime soon. We're going to keep breaking things down from every single angle right here on Sixers Digest. But what would your contract prediction be for Quentin Grimes? I think as I sit here today, 3 years, $18 million annually sort of feels what might end up right to me. But we'll see what happens. Again, September to October, so we may not be looking at a short-term resolution. But do want to hear those predictions in the comments. So if you have not already, make sure you're dropping those down there. Hitting a subscribe to the channel if you have not just yet. Drop a like on this video. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.